So excited. Welcome if you watched my last video, and thank you so much to everyone who messaged me and was really encouraging about that, because that's quite a scary thing to do, I feel, at 25, to post a YouTube video and then like post it to your Instagram to say like I've done a YouTube video, even though realistically, like, what's there to be nervous about? Who cares what anyone thinks? But yeah, that was quite nerve-wracking for me to do. I just had so many encouraging messages and so many people saying that they want other ones, and oh, it was just so nice. It was just so fun for me. So thank you so much. I am gonna do it every month without fail. I'm so excited. I read 6 books in January and listened to 1 audiobook, so essentially I consumed 7 books altogether, and that's fine for me. I'm only aiming for 60 books this year. There are a lot of YouTubers who post like, I read 22 books in the month of Jan, and that's bloody awesome, but like I don't see that happening for myself unless I get paid to read books full time. I'm not there yet, so that's all good. That's all gravy. I'm happy to just read 6. Plus, audiobooks count. A little piece of advice from me to you if you're struggling to read and you're trying to get into reading is downloading Audible and pairing up your physical reads with reads in your ears. So sometimes if I'm really trying to smash out a long book, for example, I'll download Audible, I'll read a few chapters, and when I'm on a walk I'll listen to some chapters, and that really helps me get into it, because sometimes just hearing the characters' voices, or sometimes just like being able to like look at nature and also consume it makes you really excited to get back home and get back into the read in your mind. So yeah, just a little piece of advice from me to you. Really importantly as well, I am going to start having a bit of a structure to the videos when I'm talking about just general book recaps. The reason that is because I think a lot of times when I'm watching videos is pretty opinion based, which that's what you are subscribing to. Like, you're subscribing to people's opinions about these books. So of course I'm going to share my opinions, but I really want to give the plot to every book justice at the beginning, because at the end of the day, if I don't like something, or if something hasn't resonated or landed with me, that doesn't mean it won't land for you. And that's what an opinion is, and there's no such thing as a book being subjectively good or bad, although sometimes I would argue that with some of the books that I read. But a book that I have hated reading, someone else loved reading, and that's just a fact. So yeah, I'll try to keep things fair, and then I'll go in with my opinions. I really chose violence from the get-go. I don't know why I decided to start the year off on this note. I knew the premise of this book. But it is My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. If you haven't heard about this book and you watch booktube or BookTok a lot, I'd be very surprised. This is about a 15-year-old girl named Vanessa who is groomed by her English teacher, who is 30 years her senior. It alternates in timelines, so the whole kind of plot of this book begins with other students from this school coming forward to the media to say they were abused by this man, Mr. Strain, and then that particular person who's speaking out reaching out to Vanessa to say, I know this happened to you too, can you please speak out? She needs kind of other people to plead their case, so that way it's creating more of a case against Mr. Strain. Unfortunately though, even 17 years later, Vanessa is like, no, I wasn't abused, that was a genuine love story. And so as a reader, you then are watching her go back, so it's alternating timelines. You're watching this adult woman still believing that her 15-year-old self wasn't abused, and then her younger self in the alternating timeline being groomed and establishing a relationship with this old man. It is the most disgusting thing I've ever read. It was so difficult to consume. You can see like the bind is absolutely destroyed, because usually when I pick up a book, I'll read like at least 100 pages at once. Like, I'll really dig into any book that I read. I don't think I could read any more than 20 pages at a time with this book. I was with my friend Lockie at the time, and he literally asked me on repeat, like, oh, what's going on in that book? I kept reading him out lines. I was physically like grimacing at the book, having to close the pages. I found this so grueling to read. There are no details spared in this. There is no sense of saving the readers from like how difficult a situation like this would be to live through. I found present tense Vanessa really made me question my own knowledge on the cycles of abuse I think I have a pretty solid knowledge on that. I speak out about at least domestic violence quite publicly a lot. It's a massive passion of mine, and even myself as a consumer read this and found myself really disliking Vanessa as an adult and being really impatient with Vanessa as an adult, not understanding why she didn't understand that she was abused, because as a reader you know she was abused. There's no sense of confusion about like, oh, you know, it's so obvious what he was doing and how he was manipulating her and how he was grooming her. She just doesn't see it, and so you want to put your hands in the book and shake her into realization. This is 4-star for me, which is bloody a really good rating. Realistically, it probably is 5-star writing. I think if you read this, no matter what your understanding is of child violence, you would probably come out having a much better understanding of the experience of child violence. You see the trauma she is dealing with as an adult because of Mr. Strain's actions juxtaposed with the love that she feels that she has for him, and it's exhausting. The only reason I couldn't rate it 5 stars is I could never pick this book up again. I frankly want to do a ceremony where I burn it, and I would never recommend it to anyone. But if you do read it, definitely tell me, because I want to speak to people about this. I just would never put it on my friends to read it. I would just never ask my friends to go through what I went through by reading it. Okay, obviously after reading My Dark Vanessa, I wanted anything light and airy, and that's when I listened to The Space Between by Michelle Andrews and Zara McDonald. They have a podcast called Shameless. A lot of my friends probably listen to it. I love Shameless. It's my favourite podcast. I literally wait every week for it to come out on a Thursday. It's basically a podcast where they talk about pop culture and pop culture news, and it's really fun as a woman to listen to really intelligent women talk about silly things, because it doesn't have to be stupid just because people have told us that it's stupid. Sometimes it's just fun and entertaining. So I listened to their book. They're talking about their 20s and the space between the not knowing of your 20s and the knowing of your 20s, the space between career moves, the space between friendship breaks up, the space between loves, and yeah, it's just a really comforting read, and I listen to it every single year, or comforting listen. I listen to it every single year when the Shameless podcast is on break. I gave that 4 stars. And then I still wanted something light and easy because I was still traumatised by My Dark Vanessa. And so I went for Before We Were Strangers by Renee Carlino. This is a friends to lovers to strangers to lovers second chance romance, and that's kind of my favourite plot. It's very reminiscent of Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren to me. I loved this book. This is the story of a boy named Matt who sees the love of his life, Grace, on a train as it's taking off. So he runs up to the train but obviously doesn't reach the train. He's not seen her in 15 years, but he's kind of never stopped loving her. And when they got out of contact after college, he didn't know why. Then it alternates in timelines to them meeting in college, and now him trying to find this woman who he kind of never stopped loving. So what he does is he puts one of those misconnection ads up on Craigslist. I don't even know if that's a thing anywhere except for America, but I feel like everyone knows what it is. The whole kind of spiel on the back is the Craigslist ad, but I'll read out the last paragraph. After seeing you, all of the youthful feelings and memories came flooding back to me, and now I've spent the better part of a month wondering what your life is like. I might be totally out of my mind, but would you like to get a drink with me and catch up on the last decade and a half? I adored the past timeline of them in college. I really connected with the characters. I thought their banter was genuinely funny. Grace, as a college student, reminded me of me. She was saying, like, all of these lines from Grace are like stupid jokes that I would make, I feel. I can't even think of any examples, but I just remember thinking that as I was going. It was very much Matt fell in love with Grace first, and I love boys falling in love with the girls first in the story. The rating would be 4 stars for me. The only place that this fell flat was the present tense. So I personally was not sold by the reason they had not been in contact for a long time. And when the plot twist happens in this book, I was infuriated. I thought it was unreasonable that they hadn't got back in contact. So yeah, that's the only reason it's not a 5-star read for me, but I read it in a day. It was so much fun for me, and I absolutely adore Matt and Grace and their romance. So yeah, I would really recommend this if you have romance on your mind. I've had this Dark Academia classic on my to be read for forever, but I've always been quite intimidated by it. A lot of the feedback from people is they got into a real reading slump when they tried to read this. I can see how that might happen. I can't lie, I had to Google a few words in that first 100 pages, but The Secret History by Donna Tartt. Sorry, can I just like take a moment for the cover? I love like the black matte cover with like, I was sitting at a bus stop with this book reading and two girls came up to me and told me that I looked so cool. And I think it's completely down to the cover. I don't even think it has anything to do with me. I just think this cover is a cool girl cover. This is just like a cool person book. I don't know. I felt cool reading this. I can't even lie to you. The Secret History is about a student named Richard who goes to college and he wants to learn, or he wants to do a Greek class, but this particular Greek class is taught by this classics teacher who never lets anyone new into his class. His class is a group of only 5 misfits, really. Like they don't talk to anyone else in the school, they only talk to each other. They're incredibly pretentious, but Richard gets into this class. So now the class is made out of 6 of these students. On the first page of this book, number one thing that you find out on this book is that out of the 6 students, 5 of them have murdered one of them. You know who it is, you know how it's happened, you just don't know why or like what's occurred to make that happen. And so then for the first half of the book, you're basically leading up to this murder and you're waiting for this murder to happen and you're kind of getting all of the ideas of why this murder's happened. And the second half of the book is the implications of the murder and how they're grappling with their mental health. And this book is a masterpiece. Like as I was reading this, I regularly had to put it down because it is an incredibly, I found it to be quite a complex read. I think I've got a pretty good established vocabulary, but I definitely had to Google sometimes. I finished this book like 3 weeks ago and I haven't really stopped thinking about it. I feel like this is the kind of book that I could write essays about. Just wanted to get on here and apologise to my Year 12 English teacher, Miss Lang, for the fact that I never wrote any of the essays that were required. And now I'm on YouTube talking about writing recreational essays. If you see this, I'm sorry. There are so many layers. The narrator feels unreliable. The ending, I don't even know if that happened the way that it's written. The way that the characters felt lovable to me in the first half and so deeply hateable for me in the second half. The way that Richard, the narrator, felt like he got more pretentious as the book went on. And when it happened, I found myself like dreading, like I found myself feeling the angst that the characters were feeling. Donna Tartt is amazing, and I didn't listen to the audiobook of this one, but I've heard a lot of snippets of the audiobook on TikTok, and I would definitely recommend that if you are going to tackle The Secret History, to pair it with the audiobook, just because her voice, the way that she merges sentences together is like, it scratches apart in my brain. The only way that I can describe Donna Tartt's writing is that it literally felt oozy. Like I was reading it and being like, oh, like that is such a beautiful way to form a sentence. I went into a job interview and the interviewer asked me what I was passionate about, and somehow I ended up on a 15-minute rant about this book that had me running out of breath. I was so deeply enraptured in the conversation about The Secret History that I was like, you know, when you're talking too fast. That happens to me quite a lot, but yeah, it happened to me in the job interviews. The Secret History, 4.5 stars. The only reason it's not 5 stars is because I wanted to put it down quite a bit, but I think maybe in a few years when my reading brain has improved even more, if I reread this, it probably would be 5 stars. I think it's a masterpiece, and I am not surprised at all that so many people have it as their favourite book of all time. Also, sorry, Henry, whether it's right or it's wrong, Henry is daddy. After The Secret History, I wanted to put my brain at rest, and I have known this would be an easy read for quite a long time. The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. Tell you what stopped me from reading this book is this cover. You will notice very quickly that I'm a sucker for a good cover. I'm also a sucker for a bad cover, and I know you're not meant to judge a book by its cover, but I'm sorry. I do actually think that's just, I do get embarrassed by that. I don't know. Anyway, I shouldn't be such a prude about people kissing on a cover. It's not that big of a deal, but yeah, I hate this cover. I hate covers like this, and that's just my truth. The Love Hypothesis is about a girl named Olive. I'm impressed that I'm remembering all of these characters' names. Like, I don't even have notes in front of me. I actually did have notes in front of me for my last video, but I'm just remembering them. This is about a girl named Olive who is a PhD student, a PhD science student, and she has told her best friend that she's going on a date because she wants her best friend to feel okay to date her ex, essentially. So she's then in uni, in college, and her best friend walks in, and so she has to kiss whoever is closest to her to kind of convince her best friend, like, no, yeah, I am on a date, I wasn't lying to you, I'm on a date in college. And so she runs up to the closest person to her and kisses him, and that person happens to be a professor at the college named Adam. And then begins this fake dating between Olive and Adam to convince her best friend that she can date her ex. This was sugary fun. Did I cringe sometimes? You bet I did. Did I find Olive infuriating? Yes. Yes, I did. A big crux of the plot in this was the lies that Olive was telling to protect people, and she kept having to tell lies to cover up other lies, and obviously there needs to be like a plot, there needs to be a tension point. I just hate that being the tension point. That's not for me. Stop lying, Olive. You might actually find that things just work out if you stop lying. That was just like a really infuriating element of it to me, but it was fun and it was sugary, and quite honestly I really loved Adam as a love interest. He, I think, is beautiful. The way it all panned out at the end I really enjoyed, so I would recommend it if you need like an easy read. 3 out of 5. 3 out of 5, yeah, it's fine, it's good. The next one I read was Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawagachi. This is talking about covers. Like, look at the little like glittery bits. I adore this cover. It's only a little book. This is a story about 4 different perspectives. It's basically told in 4 small stories, and they kind of all intertwine, but it is about a coffee shop in Japan where you can go back in time. There are a collection of rules, and the number 1 rule is when you do go back, you must drink the coffee before it goes cold. You're seeing the story of 4 different people and why they would want to go back in time. Again, quite small. So as I was reading it, and to be honest, within like the first few pages, I thought, I'm not going to get too like emotionally attached to this book, I don't think. It's just going to be an easy read. It's quite simple writing. I was like, yeah, this is like nice. That's it. So in my head I'm thinking maybe a 3-star, maybe a 3-star, but I just didn't think that it was going to impact me really in any way. Actually, on the night that I read this, recorded myself crying with the intention of like, this will be funny for context because I thought I wasn't going to cry. But I actually can't put it in. I've just looked back and I've actually deleted it from my own phone because I am not even okay with rewatching myself look like that. So just trust me, I did cry. In one page was fine and suddenly snot was coming out of my face. I was hysterically crying over this book. I felt my throat closing over and I felt like I knew what was coming. I closed the book because I was at a cafe and I didn't want to cry in public, and I came home to read this in bed, and lo and behold, I bawled my eyes out. This book is just a lovely little read. It gave me so much gratitude towards my relationships with my sisters, towards the gift of memory and time with the people that you love, and yeah, it just felt like something I would remember for a long time. So I would definitely recommend Before the Coffee Gets Cold. It does have some other books, like there are other parts of this series. I don't know if I feel inclined to read those ones, maybe at some point, but yeah, I feel like I'm quite content with having read this book by this author and just leaving it at that. But yeah, it was beautiful. 4 stars, by the way. I think 4 stars. It's not 5 for me because I'm going to be honest, 5 stars are very hard to get for me, and it has to give me like a very specific type of feeling where I just can't get enough. A 5-star read to me is the sort of book that I close and I want to start reading again immediately. 4 stars are amazing rating though, so I've had a really good reading month overall, like quite a few 4 stars. But this one's a 5. The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This book has been on my list for such a long time, and I just thought that it might be a bit juvenile. I thought that it might be a little bit overhyped. It's constantly talked about, but there is a reason why things are hyped, and sometimes it's okay to follow the trends. In fact, it's always okay to follow the trends. I'm not immune from following trends. The Inheritance Games is a story about a girl named Avery who is poor. She literally, at the day before this whole thing occurs, is sleeping in her car, and she then has a visitor to her school to tell her that she has inherited some money from this man that she's never met. When she goes to the inheritance kind of meeting with the lawyers, she finds out that she's inherited over $40 billion. This gentleman has 4 grandsons and an entire family who've inherited basically nothing and are like, why? Who are you? Why have you inherited all this money? Who are you to our grandfather? It then sets off this series of events where this grandfather set up basically an entire game for them to find all the cute clues of to see why she inherited this money. This book felt like an escape room. It felt like you were pressing a certain button to take you to a certain room. The mansion was ever growing and there was just a never-ending amount of hidden tunnels and rooms, and there was elements of romance in here. There was elements of family, like toxic family dynamics. I can't really explain it in too much depth because I will destroy the whole plot for you. All I can say is this is part of a trilogy. This is the first book in a trilogy. I read this book, I closed it, I got on a bus, like I literally immediately put on my clothes to walk to the bus stop to go to the bookshop to get the next one. They didn't have it, so I started reading it again because I was like, I can't stop reading this writing. It was this is magnificent to me. I adore this. I think this has unlocked the fact that I really like a mystery. I really like plot twists. I really like the sense of like page turning that you get from a book like this, where you want to know what's happening, and you're trying to figure out the mysteries. And the romance in this is flawless to me. I can't get enough. This has got everything I want in a book. If you've read it and you don't like it, I don't want to hear it. I genuinely don't want to hear it. It was so fun to me. So yeah, it's my first 5-star of the year, and I cannot wait. I finally got the second book and I cannot wait to read it. It's literally the second book being on the bookshelf looking at me right now is helping me get through the books that I'm reading right now, because I've told myself you have to finish this one before you start the next one. So I'm like aggressively reading this one that I'm reading right now just to get to the next one. I am so excited. Let me know if you read any of these, because I always just want to talk about books in general. And thanks so much to all of the people who messaged me last time I made one and told me what books they have read or what books they're going to read, or asked me for suggestions. I've actually had a few people message me being like, I'm in a slump, or I haven't read in ages, can you recommend a book to me? And like, I am always open to having chats about books or anything, to be honest. I just like talking. So yeah, please do message me if you want recommendations. Thanks so much. I hope that you have fun watching this. Alright, bye!